Alright, I am not organized for this. Thought I'd let you see my FF11 pack, but I believe, yes. Smokes vs. Delial for Triad Wars is happening. What round is this? I think it's the semifinals. I have really liked Smoke's play that I've seen so far this tournament. I thought Deli had a really nice win last round over Akiyama, though I didn't get to record that. So I'm pretty excited about both these players. They tied the first game. Smokes thought he was winning after the third move of the game. I guess Deli played the third move, and Deli thought that move was not good, but that there probably wasn't a win. Okay, we might look into that in a moment. We might go check that game out. I will bring it up for my later perusal. But let's focus on this game. We should also figure out what the stips are. There's so much to learn. This is a very well organized video, we can all agree. Um, let's head over to the TW17 document. Yes, this will be determining who faces turds in the finals. Don't think I've got any of turds this tournament. I missed the turds cookie semifinal. Okay. From what I have seen, no disrespect to turds, who's obviously a top player, I have been most impressed by Smokes and Deli this tournament. Um, Now, does that mean anything? Does the player I've been more impressed by so far in the tournament necessarily win the next round? Certainly not. But I think this could potentially be a really good match. All right, level 6 through 10. No repeated number combos, max of 2 level 10s, so probably 2 10s, 3 level 9s, and every card must have a 7. To me, that speaks to something different than the way both players have gone. If every card must have a 7, I want to maximize my plus and same wall potential off 7. Specifically my same wall, but I want A's, 7s, and 4s. Now, if the opponent knows I want that, maybe they can do something to exploit that, but it's hard to exploit that when you have to have 7s on your cards. Like, you can't run, I don't know, A875s, that's not legal, right? Something that can take advantage of 7s like the 8-5 gap, you just can't really have on a card that has a 7 unless it's a 9-8-7-5, and that's the 9's not very good. So my instinct would be like maybe A7-4-4s on level 9 or the like. Deli went an A7-5-4. And um A9-7-3s makes sense, but A8-7-4s might have value over that. I'm not sure 8-8-7-6s and 7-7-6-6s will play all that well, or 8-7-8-4. But it's an interesting try, because if you think the other person will like mass basically A7-7-4s and A7-4-4s, right? Which is my first instinct here, is I know 7 is the target number, and I can build something that takes advantage. I will be able to play off my own cards for sure, and I can probably play off my opponents because all their cards need a 7 too. If you think your opponent's going to do that, you want to stick out a lot of 8s and 9s. So I think Smokes is basically predicting that Deli will play like my idea. And he is coming up with a hand that will put out numbers that are tricky for that hand to deal with. Deli is going closer to what I'm saying, but he clearly also wants to be able to hit 8s and 9s. You can see 5-7-8-4, the 5-7 part hits 8s, the 6-6-7-7 is gonna be some 9 coverage. A7-6-4 is gonna be some 8 and 9 coverage. So they are both trying to build more varied hands, but it's interesting because I think what Smokes has built is something of an attempt to make an anti-hand to what I would build. But Deli's not quite on what I would build, or my first instinct to build at least. He's on a little more maneuverable version. And that might mean that Smoke's cards are just not quite as strong as they should be. Right? If you know there are a lot of 7s, you want to have 7s and 10s. If you know there are a lot of 8s, you want to have 8s and 10s. The reason you run 8-8-7-6s is because they provide this variety of coverage against 10s, 9s, and 8s. But if you know there's a lot of 7s, yes, the 8s can overpower 7s, but it's a card that's going to miss more. As I found out much to my dismay in a match against Addy where he destroyed me running a ton of A7-7s. And so I think there's something tricky going on, and I would favor Deli from the hands, but maybe that is a horribly wrong understanding. Maybe I'm getting everything wrong because it sounds like Smokes got a big advantage in game one. And I notice if I bring up game one, let me close all my extraneous windows. But in game one, they said in the chat the move order was 172. And if you look at the cards that were played, we just saw 1 and 7. And in fact, if I bring up that game, it looks like they repeated and they repeated the hands. So my instinct is Deli has the hand advantage. But clearly, according to both of them, Smokes got an advantage in the last game. Now, obviously, you can get an advantage not related to the hands, but this is an interesting thing. We know Deli in the last game went 6-6-7-7 in 2, and then Smokes went in 4, locking in the card in 1. That makes a lot of sense with 9-7-1-9. Now, one thing that comes to mind for me is both of Smoke's captures in 2 have an outfacing 7. So if Deli goes in 4, it's difficult for Smokes to go in 2. And Smokes only recapture in 8. Now he doesn't need a recapture in 8. Deli can't take from 4. Okay, so Smokes is able to keep up whatever cards he wants. He doesn't have to recapture. And the card Deli would probably most like to put in 4 is 9A37, and he probably wants to hold on to that card. 7-4-6A can also do work comboing cards in 2, but because it overpowers, it can get comboed back, and you'll notice 8-4-8-7. If Cerberus lands in 3, 8-4-8-7 might land in 6. So 9A37 is the much more reliable thing, which is probably what scared Deli off from going in 4 last time, is there's not a very pleasant card to put there. So we can maybe see how Smokes is doing interesting things with his hand. You'll notice his move in 7 doesn't line up perfectly against 1. Deli does block 4 this game. Okay. So there are 2 questions. One is, can Smokes go in 2 anyway? Right? Can either of his moves in 2? Does he have a setup in 5? I don't see it. I don't think he does. So then he's most likely to go in 5 or 8. Now, Deli has a capture in 8. There is a threat in 8. And we don't have combo play against that threat from Smoke's perspective. But if you went 5 and Deli went Cerberus 8, as long as you have 8-4-8-7, or even probably 7-8-8-6 in as well, depending what goes in 5, you can take Cerberus back and you're safe because Deli has a down weakness. So there is an argument that you can go in 5 because Deli does not have clear threats in 8, and you may as well grab a second card on that row. On the other hand, which card are you going to do that with? Because either 3-7-9A or 9-7-1-9 in 5 has a weakness to 9A-3-7, and your other capture, 8-4-8-7, might be a really good card to hold on to. That might be a really useful card for later. And for instance, if you play 8-4-8-7 in 5 and Deli plays Cerberus in 8, yeah, you have 7-8-8-6 in 9 grabbing Cerberus, and you're like, yes, I did it. And then maybe Deli plays in 6 and keeps 9A37 up, and that just sweeps you on the top row. It just sweeps you. 3-7-9A and 9-7-1-9 are completely swept by that card. Not only are they same walled if either one of them lands in 2, but if either one of them lands in 3, they are also captured with a combo. 9-7-1-9 is plus walled, admittedly it won't flip anything else, and 3-7-9A is samed. So if Deli gets a configuration where 5, 6, 8, and 9 are all blocked, and he just keeps 9A37, and Smokes has had both 8-4-8-7 and 7-8-8-6 out of his hand, Deli wins. Now here, maybe there's a version where Smoke survives, right? He has that powerful same in 5. So from the reasoning we just said, say Deli goes Cerberus in 9. Smokes takes the same in 5. And Deli goes 6-6-7-7 in 6, setting up 9A37 to dominate. Smokes lives with 9-7-1-9 in 3, because 9A37 does not capture 5. Okay, but we can reorder the moves. What if Deli plays 6-6-7-7 in 9? Smokes takes the same in 5. Looks great. He has 3 cards locked. He is up 6-4. Looks really great. And then Deli plays Cerberus in 6. And it's 5-5 and 9A3-7 sweeps. I think this is extremely plausible. You really hate losing games like that. Like every closed player has lost some games like this, where you lock in 3 cards and they have locked in nothing. And they go in 6, and suddenly, if they just happen to have the combo, they win. And Deli here specifically does have the combo against both cards. And this just speaks to how strongly a 7 and an 8 combine. I think 6-6-7-7 in 9. I'm not sure if it's the best move, but I think it's really dangerous. Now, because Smokes has locked the card in 7, he is not obliged to go in 5. But it's really hard for him to go in 2, and any move or 5 or 6, Deli can set up the sweep. So he kind of has to block 2 or 3 to avoid this kind of sweep, unless I'm just miscounting, which I might be. It's been a long time since I've played a game of Open Triple Triad. But I think there's this really interesting, and Deli's really good at spotting this. This is a strength Deli has that is, generally speaking, well beyond my strength in this area. Is I am good at calculating specific lines, and I am good at noticing what affects the board now. But Deli is really good at knowing what squares to leave open for some sweeper in the future. He's very, very good at this. And so, if how dominant 9A37 is on the top rank struck out, like, seemed important to me, there is like no chance he is not seriously considering such ideas. Doesn't mean he'll play them. But he is definitely considering, how do I get 9A37 to sweep the top? And to do so, you need 7886 out of Smoke's hand. And 7886 is such a perfect square in 5. How can Smokes turn it down? And that's where I think 6677 is really dangerous. And the thing is, because it has such a perfect square in 5, you might say, okay, he realizes he can't do that. But if you don't take that perfect square, it's a really tough position. Because again, if you go in 6, well, Deli gets the square in 5, and he still has that card to sweep you. Maybe you held on to 7886 and you survive. You have to hold on to 7886. So maybe Deli can go in 6, because your only way to set up the sweeper is that. But what is Smokes put in 6? If he puts 7886 in 6, he's lost the key card. If he puts 379A in 6, Deli has the same wall in 3. It seems like Deli's cards are suddenly doing a ton of work again. Yeah, Deli plays it. And this seems really, really dangerous for Smokes to me. It's possible it's already lost. I mean, not already. Games are often lost at this point, but it is possible it is lost. I like Deli's move in 4. I think blocking 4 was the right idea against this move. And I think 9A37 is just too strong. One thing about having paired cards is it really favors the first turn player. Like, the reason people run Squall and Cypher hands is because Squall and Cypher play really well off each other. If you have a Squall and they have a Cypher, you want to be on first turn. Now, there are ways to organize the board so the right squares are blocked and it doesn't play. And you might think that Smokes did the right thing to do that, right? 9A37 is a card that faces the right, so if you fill up the left, it's not going to be facing the action. But the way pairs work, it actually lands really well when it's facing away from the action, because that's when it can hit its same walls and combo back. So it looks like 379A faces the action, but 9A37 is the dominant card. And I think that is a pattern that happens quite a bit with opposite pairs. And it's one of the reasons in Open it can be so frustrating if you land on the same hand as the opponent. And that is a big reason why you do not run the hand I was suggesting at the start. The A7-7-4s and the A7-4-4s. Is if you get second turn and they ran the same thing, you probably just lose without resistance. Like, it's just really tough. Everything you play, they have the combo initiative against, essentially, and they get last turn. On the other hand, if you get first turn, you win. So I do think those hands, or have a very good chance of winning. I do think those hands, if you think you're the underdog, trying to like run the same hand as your opponent can actually be really effective if the hand is pair reliant, right? Which usually means level 10, right? If we're on level 6. You know, 8-7-5-3s are great and they play off each other okay, but they can't same wall each other. They can't even plus wall each other, right? If I'm running 8-7-5-3s and you run the opposite 8-7-5-3s and you get first turn, it is fine. I don't have a problem. It is 10s that specifically make this really devastating. You see this somewhat with 8-7-6-4s. You can see it with things like 7-6-4-4s or 6-3-6-7s as well. Level 5, 7, and 10 have this effect more than any other level, which is part of the reason why some people love levels 5, 7, and 10, and part of the reason why some hate them. You'll notice Smokes has realized I can't go 7, 8, 8, 6, and 5. He's trying to find a way to use 9, 7, 1, 9. And maybe he'll find it. Maybe he can land that in 2 or something and have 7, 8, 8, 6 ready to go, and it can do sufficient work. He plays it in 3. Okay, that blocks 1 of 2 and 3. And it is a square where 9A37, even if it takes it, can't get any combo play off it. If Deli plays Cerberus in 5, Smokes can play 7-8-8 in 6, or 3-7-9A, but 7-8-8-6 is really Smokes' MVP this game, the one card that's keeping him alive. If Deli plays 9A3-7 in 5, Smokes is only down 6-4. He can just take 6. Cerberus has no captures in 2. There might be better, but we're finding at least a tie. So Deli can't win by going in 5. If Deli goes 7-4-6A in 6, then Smokes can take the 7-8-8-6 in 5 that we've all dreamed of. And if Deli plays 9A3-7 in 6, Smokes can't do the same thing because it gives a plus, but he can play maybe 3-7-9A, and Deli only takes one thing back. But Deli's up 7-3, so taking 2 things isn't enough. So is 9A3-7 and 6 the win? I think it is. Let's check 2 and then come back. If Deli plays Cerberus in 2, then 7-8-8-6 and 5 is fine for Smokes. And if Deli plays 9A3-7 in 2, he goes up 7-3, but Smokes has a triple capture back, and Deli doesn't combo with Cerberus at the end. So I think the only winning move for Deli can be 9A3-7 and 6, but that does look to me like he gets the win. I wonder if 9-7-1-9 in 2 was any better. Yeah, Deli plays it. Very interesting. We'll bring up the solver. May as well start bringing it up. Incidentally, if anyone makes it this far in the video, I'd like to announce I've made some really interesting progress on potentially some quite good closed bots, better than I've produced before. I had 2 main directions to try to figure this out. We should see if all rules are in effect. They are. I had 2 main directions I was going in to try to figure this out, and one of them seems to have borne fruition. And we may end up with some real closed bot progress, which would be lovely. I really like how Deli set up the late game sweeper this game. And I think, despite Smokes finding, he goes in 8, he sets up the perfect same in 5, but it was also kind of the perfect storm for it not working. You just get swept at the end. You need to hold on to that card. Very interesting. I'm glad I shouldn't talk about me in these videos, but just to be happy with my triple triad ability, which obviously that is the player I am most interested in. I am pleased I saw this potential danger coming because it's a sort of Smokes should have the positional advantage. And that he didn't took a really interesting circumstance. So yeah, congrats to Deli. Really nice win. Really nice example of how good Deli is at spotting sweepers at distance. Let's see if I can switch over to Monsieur Solver. Well, you got the solver window. Okay, it should be called triple triad. I'm so good at this. All right, you have the solver output, but you don't have, okay. Is that it? Hey, that looks good. Okay. So you can see if I click dump eval in the window, it'll give all the ties and losses. So Smokes played in 7. Now, if I press the button, it'll start having overlapping output, which will be very confusing, but you can scroll up if you need to in the video and find stuff. So it thinks Smokes is doing quite well after this move. In the last game, Deli went. Let's find out where he went in the last game. Last game, Deli went 6-6, 7-7, and 2. And they both thought Smokes was doing very well there. And he was. He was winning. I have too many windows open. So we played 9-7-1-9 and 4. Yeah, Smokes is so good. Like I know the match just did not go his way, but Smokes is so good. To get a winning position against Deli is a feat and something to be proud of. So he went 4, which was correct. And then Deli went 3. Deli went Ramses in 3. And now there was a win in 5 and a win in 6. Both with 8-4-8-7. What did Smokes do? Smokes went in 5 with 7-8-8-6. And that ended up not quite being the win. So why was he scared off 8-4-8-7? Presumably, he didn't want to walk into the big combo, but of course he combos back. Was there some way for Deli to set up? Maybe it's possible I have the moves wrong, but it looks like, yeah, Smokes had a winning position and did really nicely to earn it. This game, Deli improved with a6, 7, 6, and 4. Now, there are a lot of ties, but as you could tell from me getting nervous here, it was pretty scary. Pretty scary. He went 8-4, 8-7, and 8, which is a tie. And so now before I click the move, I sort of ended up with, I thought 9-7-1-9 and 2 could be the tie. And I got here right around when Smokes played it in 3. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, so there's one tie, and it wasn't there. It was 9-7-1-9 and 6. Ooh. And we can see some of the point is this card 9A37 is no play against it. If they block 5, so 9A37 sweeps, well, it doesn't sweep, right? It blanks. Yeah. If you go 3, then 7-8-8-6 and 5. Unlike the game continuation, where the problem with 7-8-8-6 and 5 is it overpowers 6, and there's a combo. If you play 9-7-1-9 there, it never gets, it's the card in 5 is never overpowering, and so it never matters if it's comboed. Also, it isn't comboed here. But you have 7-8-8-6 to block against 9-8-3-7 on the top row, and it can flip at least one thing. And here it gets the combo, which is just enough to hold the tie. Yep. And if Deli goes 3, you go 5, and Deli can't go 2 and set up 3. So anything he goes in 2, you also go 5. Yeah, so it was 6. But again, this was tough to work out. This is not easy to work out. So this was a weirdly difficult position because you look at after Smokes move in 5 and 8, he just has this perfect card for 5. Like this looks like it should be a very stably good position. And I think it probably is a pretty decent position if Deli decides he has to block 5. Right? If Deli decides I can't let you do that. But Deli saw to the sweeper and it was just really difficult after this move. Possible to save, but this is the exact kind of position. Like every top player has had a position. Smokes calls this the L, by the way. I call the L this position, and Smokes calls it this. We've learned from this is Smokes draws his L's very poorly. But Smokes has actually talked about the L. I've had conversations with him about it, but it's an interesting thing because it is one of the it is a structure where the most high-end players have kind of made mistakes. It turns out this is actually one of the more difficult structures to play, and it's because there's only 12 moves to check, but when these are complex, the correct move is often something like this, which doesn't capture anything, locks in an opposing card for the opponent, doesn't even set up anything for you. It just awkwardly doesn't quite align with the opponent's cards. And those are the hardest moves to find. So, like, this might genuinely be the last move you look at. right? It is entirely possible you check every other move first. Now, some of those moves, like here or like here, are maybe really quick to check, right? So I'm not saying you should never get there or anything, but it's often the last move you check, and it relies on very specific number combinations to work or not work. And so you have to be really precise on the calculation. You have to not waste time while thinking, because if you just look for ideas instead of just, I'm going to calculate everything, you might not get there. Um, yeah, this is the exact kind of position so many players, top players, have screwed up. Like, we have mistakes, I'm sure, from myself, though I actually don't remember one from me from this setup. I remember ones from less complex setups. So obviously, I would screw some of these up over time, and I probably have. I just don't remember. I remember Akiyama screwing up one of these. Um, I remember Stuff not saving one of these. I think I remember one of Turds. It's just, yeah, this is one of the most frequently messed up positions, and this was a weird version of it. And yeah, I think this was a very interesting game. I hope you enjoyed it. Um, yeah, very interesting. And you can also tell, like, one thing really interesting is here 9 ties, 6 losses is a low loss rate, a high tie rate. This suggests Deli has a clear advantage and should be looking for the move that presses most. But if you look at this position, 9 ties, 15 losses, this is not a position. These are not numbers that say Smokes is in serious trouble, right? These are numbers that say like Smokes is under slight pressure, and he makes the most like conventionally appealing move, setting up the perfect same in 5, and suddenly he has one tie that is very hard to find. Triple Triad's a very good game, very complex game. Yeah, because it turned out that this stupid 9A37 just dominates the top of the board like nothing else, and that makes all the conventional lines impossible, right? Like, you could just, this is the position I was talking about over and over again, but I never put it up on the board, and you can just see the work 9A37 is putting in. This is the problem. Smoke saw the problem. He identified it. He tried to avoid it, but he didn't find the one resource that would work. And Deli did spot how to set this up very nicely. All right, good game. Yeah, congrats to Deli for making the finals. I still feel good about how Smokes is playing right now. He got a winning position in game 1 against Deli, which, is nothing to sneeze at. There is a very decent chance that will be the only lost position Deli has all tournament. And he also played what, like. So here's the difference between open and closed. Open is specific, closed, you are playing against a range, right? Open, you are playing against exact cards and you are doing the correct thing for an exact complex configuration. Closed, you are playing against the range of what they might have. Now, that range is somewhat determined by what cards are possible to have. It's somewhat determined by which of the things you're afraid of is most threatening, so you can like mitigate risk, or you can go for, okay, I think I have to go all in here. It is somewhat affected by knowing your opponent and what patterns they tend to play in, right? There's a bunch going on, but like poker, you are playing against the range of possibilities. They are on a range of cards. You can narrow that range, but they are more likely to have this than to have that. You are playing the move that is best against their range. You are not saying, well, they have exactly this card, so this move is best. You are saying, well, they might have this, they might have that. What plays best against that range of possibilities? And that means in closed, you actually often play much more consistently, right? Because if I take a random number 0 to 100, could be anything from 0 to 100. If I take 10 random numbers 0 to 10 and add them up, that number will mostly be much closer to 50, right? Because the odds of me drawing, like in the 0 to 100 version, the odds of me drawing a number between 0 and 10 is 10%, right? In the second one, to get a number between 0 and 10, I basically have to draw a number between 0 and 1 10 times in a row. It's down to like 1% that I get that total number 0 and 10. The more factors we combine, the more likely it is to average out to something in some middle-ish range. Which means when playing against a range, when saying they might have this, they might have that, we much more often are going to go, okay, this move is on average the best in this structure, so I'm going to make it. And when you get that structure again and again, unless you have very weird cards, you're probably going to make that move fairly reliably. There are some positions where there might be multiple types of moves you like, but there are going to be some positions where you probably are like, yeah, I don't have a good card to set up the Q, so I'm almost always going to set up the T. Maybe sometimes I can go in the diagonal far corner, or sorry, not the T, the S or Z. But like, you're going to play similar moves much more frequently. With exact cards, there will be explicit reasons. You'll see those cards and you'll know, oh, I can't do that here. I have to find something else. I can't go with the move that's generally best. I have to go with the move that's specifically best. And this was a sort of fascinating game for that difference because basically, from a closed perspective, Smokes won this game. Smokes created this positional advantage where he had the perfect move in 5 to lock in 3 cards to Deli 0. In 80, 90, 95% of circumstances, this is a good game for Smokes, right? With like 90% of hand situations. You know, occasionally it's not, but most of the time, this is very, very Smokes favored. Meaning, like, if he draws, he's like, okay, sometimes I'm going to draw here, but I really do expect to win more than I draw. But we had specific cards, and we had specific cards that worked in a very goofy way that set up this really powerful sweeper. And so, what in closed would have been Smokes just outplaying Deli, in open was enough for Deli to get the win. And I really respect some of the kind of general positional understandings you gain from closed. Obviously, I'm primarily an open player, but I think the kind of understandings you get from closed of like, this is usually the correct square. It can give you really good instincts for what you should usually be doing. And then, not to get into fights about like what's the better game, open or closed, but for me, open builds perfectly upon that. And I know for a lot of people, like they're either very different things or like one of them is fun and the other's not as fun. For me, closed sets up the paradigm of what is usually the right move. And then open asks you the interesting further question of with this exact configuration of cards that you will never see again and you have never seen before, how does that change? How does those instincts you develop in closed change for these fascinating sets of specifics? And I think this was a really cool game for that. I'm probably repeating myself at this point, so I guess we'll just end the video. But I think this was a really nice example of if this is a closed game, Smokes wins it most of the time. Smokes played perfectly against Deli's range. But Deli had an exact sequence in the range, and Deli played perfectly within that exact sequence. And that's cool. That's cool. And again, it means, like I said at the start, I thought Smokes has played really well so far this tournament, and I continue to think he played well this tournament. I think this was a very difficult way to lose a game, and again, he got a winning position in game 1. Like, Smokes played really good this tournament. It's very hard to get winning positions against Deli. And yeah, I'm gonna be pretty high on Smokes going into the next tournament, and you should too. On the other hand, Deli Turds is going to be quite a final. We've been seeing it in a hell of a lot of finals in recent years, and it should be a good one once again.